Hello again. The thing was, we had to go back. We've learned a lot of things about JavaScript. It might be a bit all new, a bit difficult to get your head around new concepts when you're first getting used to all this stuff about the different variables and functions. I hope it's not too resulting too complicated, but we're trying to make it as simple as possible. So let's go back and use what we've learned about the variables and the functions to start getting our application working. So what's the first thing that's missing? We know that, and we also need this, what I mentioned before, we need to be able to access this to be able to update what's being seen. Okay, and we have to be able to keep track of what's going on in the game to be able to determine when somebody has won. Okay, so let's go step by step. Let's go back to our HTML. We're starting off with all these values. We don't actually want this set. We want this to be, when we start the game, this is going to be empty. So we'll leave this empty again. So we've just got an empty table. And next turn, we can leave that because it is going to be the first turn. Okay, we could leave that, or we could leave it empty and then set it in our JavaScript either way. Actually, yeah, let's leave it empty. But yeah, so the thing is, we need a way to reference these elements. How are we going to do that? We've mentioned before we can give them an ID. So we're going to call this one status message, this div that we want to give the content to. Let's save our index. Let's go to our JavaScript file. Okay. So now there are certain things we're going to set up when we start the application. And let's reload. Yeah, so we've cleared that out. We haven't got any status. So the things when we press reset, we're going to be clearing out all these values here, and also we want to put in the first turn is going to be for X again. So let's in our JavaScript, let's write a function for our reset. It'll be useful for when we reset the page, and also when we're initializing the page, when for our first time we run it. Okay, so let's open the parentheses for our reset function. Now the way we can get we're going to write a variable. The variable we're going to get, we want to have is going to be a way of accessing the status message element on the page. So let's call this the status message element. Okay. And there are some special variables already defined in JavaScript. So this is one of them, the document. What is a document? Document is actually the web page. Okay, so in our index, we've said doc type and the HTML. So this is referred to as a document as well. Okay, so we'll go to our JavaScript. So this is the document, and inside the document, we want to look for the element which has the ID of the status message. So how do we do that? We can have there's a function on the document called get element by ID. It's pretty handy for what we want, isn't it? And what is the ID? The ID was status message. That was the ID we defined. Okay, so with this constant, because it's not something we're going to change, is it? We've got the value of this variable is the element status message. And on the status message, we want to set it the content. Okay, so there's a way of accessing that, and that's inner HTML. Okay, so these are things I'm talking about. So again, we can look this up. Okay, so we've got JavaScript element, and we can have a look. It gives us the first result here is element in Mozilla, and we can see there's a heap of properties. Okay, we're seeing some of the most common ones. ID, we've got inner HTML, okay, on our element. So this comes in handy. You can look it up. So it gets or sets the HTML contained within the element. Okay, so this is what's inside our element. So we can set it this way. Inner HTML is going to be next turn is for X, because he's always going to be our first player, we've said. Okay, and what else? We can also set all the content of all the data cells in our table. We want to wipe that out. So if we've already got an X or a 0, we want to get rid of it. So we want to get all the cells. And again, we can look on our document, and there's another thing we can use which is called query selector. Query selector, there's another, we can look all of this up here, okay? As we did before, JS document. What is on the document? Well, let's look up Mozilla again. And we've got some of these children, different things we can look up, and some of the functions we're using here. We should be able to find referenced instance methods. These are methods, yes, the kind of functions that we call. Look, we've got the get element by ID, get elements by name, get elements by tag name, and we've got query as well, query selector. So these are the way of, and query selector gets, so query selector would get with what the selector we use. This is a way of referencing the elements on the page. We'll see how it works. And selector all, query selector all gets all of the, not only the first element that coincides with our search, but with it all. So because it's query selector, we only get the first element. If we use query selector all, it's going to get all the whole list of all the elements that match our search. So we're going to use that. Where are we? Here. Query selector all, and we're going to look for all the TD elements. Okay. So I've actually, and as it says here, what it gives us is a node list, which is a kind of a special object, but we want an array, so we can do this. And you wouldn't know this straight out, but if we want an array, want it to act as an array, we can convert it to an array with this. Say array from, make an array from what this gives us, which is a node list. So we've got so cells is going to be an array. Hope that's not too complicated, but in the end we've got an array now. That's what we're interested in. Cells. So what do we want to do with all of the cells? We've got an array of the elements which are individual cells. So for each of them we want to do something. We want to set them to 0. Okay, so this brings us to another topic in JavaScript and in all programming languages. Basically, they've all got a lot of functions, some kind of functions or methods that you can define. Usually we're always got variables with their different types. So let's go back and have a look at another topic I want to address, which is looping, to be able to do loops. So actually the video is getting a bit long for my liking, so we'll do the looping in another video. So hang out for that one. That's going to be really powerful, because we're going in with loops. We can do And we can call a function, we can do a heap of stuff, not just once, but many times, changing certain variables in each iteration. So that's very, very powerful. It allows us, in this case, and we don't have to set to all these boxes, these 9 boxes, 9 times to 0. We can do that all at once. This is really important in programming to be able to do this stuff. And when you have lists of, in some cases, of thousands of items, well, this is, you can imagine, it would be a total nightmare having to do it manually. Or maybe you don't even know how many times you have to do it. So this is all very necessary. So we'll see how that works and how we can do it in the next chapter.